So that's the thing, I've actually got multiple bottle openers in my house. Like every year for Christmas, my dad gets me a bottle opener. It's like, is this some kind of joke? So open it with a tin of peas. Get some Farrah's Marifat peas. Try saying that 3 times fast. Farrah's Marifat peas. Ah, no, it's fine there. I might get hungry later.
I will use the official fact Fiend.
It's not official. A fan made it, which means I didn't get paid, which is very annoying. I'm kidding.
Knight Rider.
Knight Rider is a TV show about a hyper-advanced AI-controlled supercar
No, it's
that
not.
solves crime.
Sorry, I just got the urge.
Knight Rider is a TV show about a hyper-advanced supercar controlled by a priggish AI that helps solve crime by running people over. That's my favourite bit about it, it just runs people over, it's great. A rating smash that saw the car become a celebrity in its own right, producers initially had trouble sourcing cars for the show. That wasn't until 10 literally fell off the back of a train and onto producers' laps. So they literally fell off a train, but not onto the producers. That would have been kind of funny, I guess.
This seems like in theme with the show if it just hits people.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Before we talk about Knight Rider, which I'm excited to talk about Knight Rider, we're announcing that we're hosting a live event here in the city of Sheffield on the 25th of August 2023. So if you're watching this before that date, mark that date in your calendars, come down to Sheffield to the Meltdown Gaming Bar where we'll be hosting Rock Band Karaoke. It's free entry, it's hosted by us, we're having some beers and a good time. So if there's any songs that you want to sing, check it out. I'm excited for that. Because like last time we did it, like we had that one guy who was like super confident, like I'm going to play Through the Fire and the Flames. And then they fucked it up like the last second, didn't they? And everyone's like, boo, boo.
Didn't I try and sing it?
Yeah.
I think I tried to sing.
You did alright, yeah. That's it, if you want to hear Brad sing, you might as well come to the event. But what do you know about some Knight Rider? Because I can give you the basic plot if you need like reminding.
Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
For anyone unfamiliar with the show, it centres around the adventures of one Michael Knight, a man with a chest wider than a car door, who roams America looking for an ever tighter leather jacket. Because that's the thing, like, I watched the show recently and I was just so surprised by how fucking tight, like, David Hasselhoff's leather jacket. Because he was built back in the day. And my favourite thing about the show as well is, like, Michael Knight doesn't look like David Hasselhoff initially. Like, I think he's like, he's a police officer or something like that, and he gets attacked by some gang members and he has to have facial reconstruction surgery and they make him look like David Hasselhoff.
It isn't me. It gives you a second chance to live. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to walk around with a face that might get you killed all over again.
You take my word, you'd be much safer with this face. And it's rather handsome.
So somebody who doesn't look like Hasselhoff gets surgery to then look like Hasselhoff?
Yeah, after they're like, I think a gang hit or something like that.
That's a South Park episode.
Well, it's the plot of Knight Rider. And what do you remember about Michael Knight's companion, KITT?
I don't know about you, Josh, but I've never actually watched Knight Rider.
I've never watched a full episode. I am fully aware that Knight Rider is a black car with like a strip of red LED lights that blink when it's talking.
Yeah, the LEDs on the front. Knight Rider is supposedly one of the most advanced vehicles in the world, and it helps Michael Knight solve crimes by running people over.
Hey man, what's this car doing?
And the image I've got in the article is I've got to share it with you guys. So,
before you do this, can I just say, before we recorded this, Karl's exact words were, let's do a video about Knight Rider because I've got a picture where he runs over a child.
I was going to zoom in on this picture of Knight Rider and just...
Oh my god!
It's just KITT chasing a little kid. And something I've talked about in the past that applies to Knight Rider is the idea that streaming has ruined a lot of old TV shows. Because back when you'd like, when Knight Rider was first airing, you'd watch one episode, then you got to wait a week. Then you watch another one, then you got to wait a week. In the age of streaming, you can watch 10 episodes in a row. And when you do that, you realise that the show is incredibly formulaic. Something like, you would have realised that eventually as a fan back in the day, but it's not as noticeable when you, but when you binge watch, it's ruined. For example, like every episode of Knight Rider opens like the billionaire who invented it going, oh, I've invented a new device for KITT. It does this. And you'll have like Michael Knight go, why would I ever find that useful? Later in the episode, oh no, I'm in a very specific scenario. If only there was something that could help me. Press the button, it does the thing.
I've invented a squirrel deterrent. Just like, why would I use that? Ends up in like a squirrel sanctuary.
But I think one of them is like, oh, I've invented a device that will, like, you know, remove all of the air from KITT and then inject, like, you know, fresh oxygen inside. It's like, why would you invent a death button? Later in the episode, oh no, someone's putting toxic gas into KITT.
I see you, Michael. I need a hand. Give me a grappling hook.
And it's like, oh, thank God that the thing that would stop this was like invented literally 5 minutes ago. It's gonna be a bad day for Michael Knight if like he got like the rocket missiles on that day. And yeah, so is there any like shows that you think fall under that? Because like, something I want to make a full focus about one day of like streaming ruining television in regards to like old TV. So is there any like shows like that you're a fan of that you think like, you know, the ability to binge watch it like weakens it somewhat?
I can't think of one right now, but one that just a point I would like to make is I feel streaming has removed my ability to memorize characters.
Yeah, because I mean, you can just blitz through.
I binge watch and I can say I've enjoyed a show, but then if I talk to you about something, I have to go, that girl who's related to that character, which I've also forgotten the name of, did this with this character.
Yeah, because ostensibly you're spending the same amount of time watching the show as if you'd watched it week to week, but you're spending less time, like, you know, thinking about it. Like, if you binge watch a season, like if you watch like Stranger Things, you binge watch a season in a day. You know, you watch that in a day. If you like, you know, if it was traditional like TV, you'd have watched like one episode for 10 weeks. And it's like, yeah, that's why you think like show like Disney is now like doing like Secret Invasion and stuff like that. Like we're going to release one episode per week because that way, you know, people are talking about it week to week. They can't binge the entire thing in one go.
I think I've said it before, but I think one of the biggest contenders for this, like released streaming ruins the show.
Yeah,
is Supernatural, because I've recently done a full rewatch of every series of Supernatural, and the lore and the character arcs and stuff do just sort of fall apart. And to people out there who love the show, like I love the show, one of my favourite shows, like definitely top 3.
That's why you did a rewatch, of course, yeah.
But one of the issues is like the characters just go through the same arcs multiple times because there's not much they can do with them, and they fight the same people over and over again. You realise like the logic starts to fall apart, and there's a bit in the last season that sort of tries to explain this a bit, where they make out that the characters have been given literal plot armor their entire lives, and this is why they always survive all of these ridiculous situations, because they have literal plot armor that gets removed and then they nearly die. And so like I think that's smart, but again, like when you watch it all in one go, it ruins it.
And you notice that, yeah. And I think one for me, like the Arrowverse, because I remember like if you do a rewatch of Arrow, like that first season of Arrow, Oliver Queen kills someone every episode.
Nobody can know my secret.
And every flashback is him murdering people on that island. But then like season 2 onwards, like, oh, I don't kill people now. But they have villains that like, oh, he's killed one person. Like, it's just, it can never be forgiven. We have to stop this guy. It's like, you're the biggest mass murderer in the show. Like, you've literally killed 50 times more people than any of the criminals you're taking down. Which obviously you wouldn't notice. Oh yeah, that was like 2 years ago. When you binge watch it, like he kills someone every episode.
Yeah.
And then he's like, huh.
After 5 years in hell, I returned home with only one goal. I wanted to save my city. And with your help, I can.
Arrowverse Barry Allen does it as well.
There's
an episode where, there's a couple of episodes where he will just murder the person he's fighting because it's the only way to stop them.
Yeah.
But they make a huge fucking deal in the later seasons
about how
they never kill. There's always another way.
Yeah. It's like something similar happens with the show, like Titans. Like not Teen Titans, which is fantastic, but Titans, the TV show.
Fuck
like,
Batman!
They kill people so much in that show, but then in the later season, like, oh, we've got to stop this guy, he's going to kill someone. It's like, well, you've killed people! Like, so they have a bit where, like, Batman's in it, because of course he's in. Like, fuck Batman, but put him in, like, a season later. Well, like, they said Batman finally snapped and killed someone, and they say, that's a line, that once you've crossed it, you can never go back. It's like, you've killed more people than Batman.
This wasn't justice. This was a massacre.
There's no saving him anymore. He can't be saved.
You've killed like 40 people and you're still the main character, you know this isn't true because you kill people. But obviously they expect you not to know that. So, oh yeah, you forgot that they killed people last episode because that was like a week ago. And now you do. Now you can just go straight back and watch. It's great. But well, I'll bring it back to Knight Rider. So you've not seen much of the show then? Do you not remember what kind of car it was? Because I think Knight Rider is like a cool fucking car.
No, I can picture it. I can't tell you exactly what car it is.
Chevy.
Well, it could be. I don't know brands of cars. But I have it here. It is a heavily modified Pontiac Firebird Trans Am.
Michael. Michael! Leave me alone. I'm coming with you, Michael. We're a team.
And in the context of the show, it's worth millions upon millions of dollars. In reality, they picked one up secondhand for I think like $10,000, and then a couple of like aftermarket parts, like a body kit, like some. The panel inside was really basic, and they built a more like detailed one for close-ups that was just in a studio somewhere. So when you see like Michael Knight pressing a button, that's like in a studio somewhere.
Is KITT an AI, or
Yes.
is it? Yeah, so it's not like a person's brain's been put into the car.
Yes, KITT is the AI, not the car, because I think they have episodes where like, you'll talk to KITT outside of the car, but the AI is inside the car. And yeah, like so Pontiac Firebird Trans Am with tens of millions of dollars, they got one second hand. The problem was though is that every episode, like they do a stunt. So it's a car, it's a show about a car. We've got to do big stunts in the car, like jumps and like racing through the streets. And what do you think happens to like a car that's like pretty old, covered in like aftermarket plastic editions?
It gets scrapped.
It does get scrapped, yeah. It gets scratched, like bits will fall off. The problem is though, in the context of a show, KITT's invincible, KITT's indestructible.
It's not paint. It's a finish bonded into the molecular structure of a new substance.
You mean the metal?
It's not metal. And it's not fiberglass, excuse me. Strike the surface as hard as you can.
Come on, Devin, I'm not going to hit my car. It's beautiful. There's not a mark on it.
So aside from like the blinking flashing light on the front and the control panel, like what else did they actually do to the car to make it different?
Like not a lot. Whereas if you get presumably behind me now, I'll edit in like a photo of like an actual just Pontiac Trans Am and then Knight Rider, the car. I'm calling it Knight Rider. No, KITT. KITT's the car. Knight Rider's the show. Do you ever do that? Like you call like the main character just the title of the show.
But if KITT's the AI, does the car have a separate name?
No, I think KITT is the car. I don't know. It's been a while since you know what? I'm not too well versed on the deep Knight Rider lore. I just know that it's really fun and that soundtrack's iconic. But according to the guy who made the modifications, one Michael Sheff, he said not much was actually done to the car. Like there was barely $1,000 worth of extra material added on. And it was mostly just an aftermarket body kit, that blinking lights on the front that barely cost anything, the panel that was built separately. He said the only real thing he did is tapered the nose more to the front so that the front profile of the car looked like a knight's helmet, Michael Knight. And that's about all he really did. And if you look at it, I'll put a picture in, you can see it with the lights as well, that'd be where the visor would be. I think that's pretty cool, it's a neat visual detail. And there's a lot of people who will buy Trans Ams and make them look like KITT because it doesn't really cost that much.
My name's Paul Nichols and this is my Knight Rider replica car. I used to watch Knight Rider as a kid.
You can make the modifications really easily at home. That people sell aftermarket stuff that you can just slap straight onto a Trans Am and it'll make it look like Knight Rider.
Unlike the DeLorean that costs a shit ton to modify.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. Saying it was a very popular car, and it was even more popular when the show came out. So a lot of people were like, "Wow, this is a really cool car. I'm gonna go buy a Pontiac Trans Am." The problem was though that the show also needed more of the car because they kept fucking crashing it.
So where do you get all of these cars from if they're popular?
Well, that's the thing, there weren't any. And the only ones that were available cost a fucking fortune. And they were already spending a fortune on the show because the stunts, every episode has a huge big stunt which would inevitably damage the car. And it's alright if it's a little bit damaged they can repair after the fact, but in the context of the show, KITT is indestructible. So you can't have it get scratched between scenes. It's when it jumps or crashes through a brick wall or something, it comes out the other side completely unscathed. And for the initial season, they only had one stunt car. So they had to keep repairing KITT between scenes because it kept getting damaged.
I love this idea that half the takes are just smashing a car and then be like, bring in the clean car.
So that's what they had to do. So after the first season came out, okay, it's really popular. Go get a shit ton more cars. We want to ramp up the scale. Put more stunts in. It's well, there isn't any. everyone's gone out and bought all the ones that are available. And the secondary market is being wildly inflated. We can't afford to buy more cars.
So you say that the initial batch of
Knight Rider cars, I think they had 2 initially. They had like a hero car for close-ups and then a stunt car that had been modified for jumps and stuff.
And then later on, a train?
Yeah, so when initially they couldn't buy more for budgetary reasons. So they had 2. The hero one, which is like the term used, the prop you use, it's for close-ups. That's the one that was kept in immaculate condition. It's the one that David Hasselhoff would arrive to a location in. But then they had a stunt one, which had been heavily modified by removing parts from it to make it lighter for jumps, putting safety stuff in there for the stunt driver.
When KITT drives up by himself, I designed a car that would drive from the right. And I would be hidden inside the seat, and I could drive up quickly, slam on the brakes, David could jump in, and we could drive out in one shot. And the only problem that came out of that is David and I fought over who was driving once he got in the car. It was always, let go of the wheel, I've got it. And I'd say, no, I'm driving, you act. And he's saying, I'm in the car, I want to drive.
Keep in mind, the car drives itself in a lot of these scenes. So the stunt driver had to lie all the way back and just guess where he was going, which must have been terrifying. Do these
for other drivers on the road, maybe.
And like I said, and people really like the show, so the secondary market for these cars was almost non-existent because everyone bought them and turned them into their own kit. So the producers were like, well, we're stuck, we need more cars. We can't make this show without more of this car. And fortunately, a train crashed. And that sounds bad, so no one was hurt. It was a freight train that just so happened to be carrying a fresh batch of Trans Ams.
You know what's impressive? A talking car. But I'll tell you what impresses me. A talking train.
This is suspicious.
It's not, because the producers had nothing to do with it.
No, they say that we need lots of extra cars. Oh, a train just happens to crash full of the cars we need.
Yeah, so what the producers did is they approached GM and said, so what's happening with those cars? Well, legally, we cannot sell them. So if we sell these cars, we will be liable if anything goes wrong. So the producer said, well, we'll dispose of those cars for you, by which they mean use them in their show. And you might think that'd be a pretty simple process, like, oh yeah, we'll give you the cars, you're gonna crash it anyway. But there was a host of legal issues with just getting those cars. Because like I said, legally, any car that's been damaged like that cannot be sold, and GM would be liable if anything went wrong. So the producers had to sign a bunch of documents that said, we will only drive them on closed roads, or privately owned land that we own, so there's no risk of to the public. And then, this is the real, the gutting one, we will destroy the cars when we're done.
Signed off for further seasons thanks to its popularity, luck would continue to shine on the production of the show, as by the end of season 1, a train derailment took place on November 1982 while transporting a number of 1983 Trans Ams, Firebirds and Camaros from the Van Nuys assembly plant. Due to this accident, these cars could no longer be sold by GM regardless of condition.
Because the risk would be, regardless of how many repairs they made to the car, if at the end of the show or if someone stole one or bought one, even if they kept it just after the show on a lot somewhere, the risk would still be there and the company would still be liable even years later. So they had to destroy every single car, and it's oh, that's gutting, right? That's a kill the car.
So they went through all this legal process to sign waivers and whatnot. Did they actually purchase the cars?
They did, for the princely sum of $1 US. So they got 10 Trans Ams for $1, under the proviso that all those things I just mentioned. And the gutting thing about the fact they had to destroy them all is that someone from GM had to be there as they lowered the cars into the crusher, and they had to crush them twice to make sure nothing could be salvaged. Because even if someone grabbed a part from it and then put that into their car, and then that car crashed, they'd still be liable. So they had to make sure that nothing was usable. So now just imagine you just sat there and you see 10 kits, one after the other, that's being fed into this machine.
Like the end of Terminator 2,
basically,
the lava.
Well, that's what they had to ensure that nothing made it out. So even a fucking headlight, someone grabbing a headlight and putting it into their car, if it was faulty, GM could be on the hook for that.
It's what is it? There's a story of supposedly a haunted car, an evil car.
Yeah.
And they take the parts out, and if you go to any other car, then that car will crash. It's like that, but KITT.
Yeah, and that's what they were worried about. So, and as a result of that, there is no official KITT in existence right now. David Hasselhoff claims that he owned one and he sold it at an auction, but there's no proof that that was one of the ones used on the show. Because like there was only like one initial hero car that was bought that was legal, and no one knows what happened to that.
A deal was made and the ownership was transferred. However, there was a small problem. Between the time that filming ended and Hollywood Productions bought the cars, many parts were taken from these cars while they languished on the studio lot.
I think the one I'm thinking of might be called like Old Little Bastard or something like that.
It's like it's a popular concept,
Yeah.
isn't it? They even like mock it in Futurama,
Yeah.
don't they? It's like it's the most evil parts of the car, and they mention KITT in that. Of like, you know, the windscreen wipers from KITT. It's like KITT wasn't evil, the windscreen wipers were, but it didn't put much in the show. Which is like a fucking great line.
A savage, intelligent military vehicle built from the most evil parts of the most evil cars in all the world. The steering wheel from Hitler's staff car, the left turn signal from Charles Manson's VW, the windshield wipers from that car that played Knight Rider.
Knight Rider wasn't evil.
His windshield wipers were. It didn't come up much in the show, though.
So literally none of these cars have survived.
We don't know, because that's the thing, like, they did their due diligence and they destroyed all the ones that they got from GM, but there's, like, a couple of them, like, they'll pop up every now and again. They're like, oh, it's a, you know, it's an actual KITT, but as I mentioned, it's very easy to make just a Trans Am look like KITT. And people who've worked on the show have said, like, if you see one for sale, it probably wasn't one of ours, because all of ours got destroyed. And there was, like, a story about, like, David Hasselhoff supposedly owned one. But it's like, even that one, it's not confirmed whether that was actually used on the show, or if it's just one that he had and then sold. But like, I guess for a fan, the fact that David Hasselhoff owned it is enough for them.
I love the idea that somewhere out there, in some prop master's like basement,
there might
is
be one.
like an illegal spark plug. He's just not meant to own it.
Well, supposedly the only thing that survived, like the guy who did the crushing, was told, like, in no uncertain terms, nothing is allowed to survive. Supposedly just out of like nostalgia for the show, he saved like the front panel of the light for KITT, and there's like a Knight Rider fan site who contacted him and asked for it, and he sent it to them, and it still works. So you know, and a lot of fans say that's the soul of KITT right there. So in a way, like, in this like, you know, this thematic way, KITT did survive, but it's just kind of like, you know, everything was done. Like the guy when he was interviewed, like, was it kind of gutting? So yeah, this was television history, and that's to destroy it. Like I was legally bound to destroy everything. And he's had, like, you know, people weren't allowed to come take even like a souvenir, even like, you know, the producers weren't allowed to take anything. People who worked on the show weren't allowed to take a piece just as a souvenir. They had to all be destroyed thoroughly and completely. And that kind of sucks.
Could you not have the ruin thing? Like, if it's crushed into a cube, could you not have cube?
Sadly, no. That's the thing, that's the terms of the deal they struck. And like, you know, they got 10 cars for $1, so, oh, it's 12 depending on some sources, but you know, either 10 or 12 cars.
So there's 12 collectible cubes out there.
Maybe, but yeah, according to the guy who destroyed them, it's like they just got crushed, like put into a big pile and then crushed again. That's kind of sad, so imagine seeing that as like a fan of the show. It's like, oh look, it's Knight Rider.
Oh, don't worry, KITT's indestructible.
Well, at least, like, you know, the front panel survived. And apparently it still works, so there's a fan out there who owns that. And that is official, because that came from the guy who destroyed all the real ones. But, hell yeah.
He's just got a closet full of knockoff ones.
I
destroyed the real one, I tell you.
The thing is, though, I fucking love Knight Rider, though, because, as I said, like, every episode is just Michael Knight comes into town. Usually, like, a little kid. It's always a little kid, because they want little kids to watch the show, will see KITT and like, oh my god, that car's so cool. Michael Knight's like, you know, you can tell it's made in the 80s. Hey, strange child I've never met, drive with me in my car. I'll take you home. And like, the kid always has a hot older sister or single mom that David Hasselhoff bangs. And then some, like, you know, some dudes will come into town and cause trouble, and then David Hasselhoff will go solve the problem with his car by running them over. It's just like every episode is like Michael Knight rolls into town, bangs a single mum and leaves. It's like, yeah, you go.
I bet it's a show with a lot of plot twists, considering that the main character's called M. Knight.
Not bad. How long have you been sitting on that one?
I thought of it the moment you mentioned his name.
Michael Knight. It's gone 26 minutes. I've had someone ask, why do you keep checking your phones? Like, this is the recorder. We record for 20 minutes, or 29 minutes, 59 seconds.
Yeah.
Because fun fact, in the European Union, you legally can't sell a DSLR camera that can record for more than 30 minutes, because then it'll be classed as a video camera, which means it gets taxed differently. So to stop that, all DSLR cameras, which is the one we use, can record for 29 minutes and 59 seconds.
I believe there are unofficial firmware and stuff you can put on them to extend. Like, I think Magic Lantern's one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff you can do with that, yeah. But like, that's just one of those like weird quirks. Similar to, you know, with the deal that the producers of Knight Rider struck with GM. Like, it's a very specific clause in there. That's like, hey, you can use the car, but you can only drive it on.
Professional.
You can only drive it on, like, private property or closed roads. And if you run someone over with it, it's not our problem. Oh, but yeah, I just love that. Just Michael Knight, MILF on that. Let's go. They try to bring Knight Rider back like 3 times as well. It's failed every time.
Oh, I mean, who would you have as like? Who do you think could replace Hasselhoff?
I don't think we've got anyone who has the raw sexual magnetism that David Hasselhoff did in his heyday. So we don't have like celebrities who look like that anymore. Like
Jason Momoa.
No, because he's too big. He's too buff.
So you need somebody less buff.
Yeah, because like David Hasselhoff he was built as fuck. He's really tall. That's the thing about David. He's like 6'5" or something.
I was going to suggest a young Tom Cruise, but now he's out.
So I'm just like thinking of that, of like, just someone who has like that look about them.
I mean,
it's the chest as well. Like you never see fucking celebrity chest hair anymore.
What about
David Hasselhoff had it all.
Liam Hemsworth,
the forgotten Hemsworth.
Now that he's
he's the Witcher.
Now that he's toned down and not as fake tanned, I know we've mentioned him multiple times today already, but it's John Cena.
Do you know what? Yeah, because he's got that like raw charisma. He could do it, I think.
Imagine Peacemaker without helmet talking to a car.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see. That's the thing as well. You've got to be like completely earnest. And like something I found out recently as well. I think we've done a video about it. Or an article about it. Is, do you know like Baywatch weirdly got like a HD remaster? It's like the best HD remaster anyone's ever seen.
You've definitely mentioned.
Like it looks fucking phenomenal. It's like Blu-ray quality. It's better quality than anything I've ever seen, and it's fucking Baywatch.
I mean, yeah.
But they wanted HD Pamela Anderson.
Yeah, all the shows get a HD remaster. Yeah. Do you know what? So I learned that blew my mind recently. Is that? Do you know like the slow motion running in Bay? Do you know why they put that in? Because like when they were editing the first episode, it was too short. So they said, "Fuck it, make them run in slow motion."
I'm pretty sure that's what Zack Snyder does, that, isn't he?
Oh,
comment section.
He's padding that runtime. Oh, perfect.